the people who are living. It is not only just the physical aspect or the natural resource aspect, but also the land and the people. So that is how we are, today's presentation, we have also drafted like that. So since 2003, every year throughout the world, this mountain day is being celebrated. Even my earlier university where I was working, we were celebrating it. The purpose of it is, let's come together, discuss about the mountain, know about the mountain, whatever information we have. You are having your own teachers over here, instructors are here, and we are also having some other exposure of other mountains. We just come together, discuss of it. Let's have a debate. Let's have a, you can say, a conversation on the mountains, because it is part of our life. In Ethiopia, you can see that almost half of our land masses or our area is above 1000 meters. So it's a very unique, Ethiopia is a very unique structure in that context, that larger portion of Ethiopia is on the highland. 1000 is a pretty good height as per the Himalayan standard. My Indian friends are here, they know it. 1000 means a pretty sort of hill station over there. So that is the concern of this celebration of it. Every year they are giving a theme to it. Like 2007, when it was celebrated largely in a large scale at global. So they have given the theme as it is what the disaster, Himalaya mountain disasters. Like this way, they have given a theme: sustainable mountain, sustainable tourism, and we are talking about the prospects of tourism in mountains and their sustainability or their challenges on that. So with this brief introduction of this International Mountain Day, again I welcome you all that you spare your time and come here to discuss this very concerned aspect, which is very much concerned with you and me and all of us. And we will get a chance to Mountain Day presentation. My task is to just take you out of Ethiopia and take you to one of the largest mountain system of the world, very attractive, that is Himalaya. And as you know that this year theme is tourism potential and environmental challenges, or we call it in short as a sustainable tourism. So I will focus it on that aspect here. When you think about Himalaya, the first thing comes to our mind is that is the snow. That's why Himalaya is called the abode of snow. That's what we are talking about it, abode in the house or home of the snow. This is the satellite image of Himalaya. Remember, we are handling with a very large mountain system. So this time in this presentation, your vision should be somewhat larger. This is the entire mountain system. This is Himalaya starting from here. It is all going 2,400 kilometers of the eastern part. And here we are having one deep gorge where we are having a very important mountain that is called Namcha Barwa. From here the Indus River enters to India. And this side we are having a Mount Nanga. So Mount Nanga and Mount Namcha Barwa, this is the main range of Himalaya. Then this is the Karakoram range. Basically it's the mountain system. So many ranges are joined here. So this is the Karakoram system you are seeing. And then Karakoram is also very high, very old, older than the Himalayan mountains. And it has a knot. We sometimes call it as a Pamir knot, Karakoram knot. Knot means that too many mountain ranges are uniting, junction. This is Karakoram. Then this side we are having Hindukush, then Kirthar and Suleiman, and then this is the huge area is called the Tibet. The highlands, it is also known as the roof of the world. The average height of this Tibet is 6,000 meters. Anyway, so this is our Himalayan system. And then just have some quick information to Himalaya. It is the youngest mountain system as per the geology. It is the highest and the largest mountain range of the earth. And area is 595 kilometers square. And length, as I told you, 2,400 kilometers. But this is the main mountain. But today in your presentation, we will add the extension, the eastern part of Himalaya also, what we call as a Purvanchal. 100 peaks, you know that average is 8,848 meters. Already Mr. Gaba has shown you average schedule. Some of the top 8,000 meters of the world, that is there. Then we are having more than 100 peaks higher than 7,200 meters. You can understand the dimension of this mountain system, that another out of Himalaya, the highest peak is Aconcagua in the Andes, and it is 6,961. So there is a big difference. Difference is there. Himalaya is really very gigantic structure. Some of the world's major river system is coming here. If I will go back for this, If you see that this entire is a Ganga river system, Ganga basin. From Tibet, one river Indus is coming and then crossing this Himalaya and entering and forming this Indus river system. And this side is coming and forming the Brahmaputra. So this entire area from Indus up to Brahmaputra is a plain area, which is feeding one of the largest population of the world, that is India. So then only these physical features will not complete the personality of Himalaya. Himalaya has a different meaning in India or Indian subcontinent. Himalaya, what is the meaning of Himalaya? Two words of in Sanskrit, him plus alay. Him means snow. Alay means like abode or home. It's a home of snow. Throughout my presentation, you will see a lot of snow. Buzu Barado you will see over here. So that is there. And either some adjectives have been given to Himalaya, like in our literature, it is said as a Nagaliraj, the kings of mountain. It is also said as a the measuring rod of the earth, and then also it is called as a Devatma, or the abode of gods. Throughout Himalaya you will get a lot of religious shrines over there of various religions. So this is called Mandand. It is a Sanskrit word. Mandand means measuring rod. It is considered to be measuring rod of the earth. If God has to measure, he will use Himalaya to measure the distance. This type of adjectives have been given to the Himalaya. And it's a spiritual pivot. That is very important to understand. It is not just a mountain, rocks and snow. It is a spiritual, cultural, religious pivot of the entire Indian subcontinent. So many of its peaks are considered to be as a reverend for Hindus and Buddhists, that till now there is no permission to climb those peaks by the mountaineers. So that type of additional things are associated with the Himalaya. Why Himalaya is so important for Indian subcontinent? That is, it's a natural fort. And what is happening because of this natural fort? Which protects the subcontinent by invaders from North and Central Asia. Central Asia, the entire history is full of the bloodshed of Mongols. But it was always saved because of the Himalaya. Take the example of the Genghis Khan, the biggest plunderer of the world. He conquered the entire Central Asia, Europe, China. But India was saved because of this Himalayan range. So another thing is, it also saved this entire subcontinent from the polar winds. If Himalaya is not there, then entire Indian subcontinent. When I say Indian subcontinent, means Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, up to Myanmar you can go. This might have been a very cold desert. Because of Himalaya, the polar winds are saved and this is protected. Another thing is, the monsoon winds are also stopped. It's a barrier. Because of this, orographic rains are happening and this entire Indo-Gangetic plain is getting a huge precipitation and giving survival for the so many rivers and of course the cultivation. So this is very important. Second thing, it's a source of numerous perennial streams, numerous streams. I'm saying you Indus, 5 rivers, Ganga, hundreds of rivers, Brahmaputra. So it's a huge river system and it's a glacial fed system. So rivers are coming from these areas and it's transported the alluvial soil. Whatever the present day Indo-Gangetic plain, including Brahmaputra plain, so it is all alluvial deposition by the Himalayan rivers. And Himalayan range is a big source of the various natural resources. Spiritual and cultural and religious, that is also very important part of Himalaya, very important part. Then it is a great potential of tourism. It is one of the great destination of tourism. Various type of tourism is going on over here. Now let's have a quick look. I'm not taking you to the geology, but just have how this Himalaya was formed about 71 million years before this, what we call the Indo-Australian plate started moving from Pangaea and then separated and then moved almost 40 to 50 million years before. It collided with the Eurasian plate, means this is the upper plate, and in between there was a Tethys Sea, and because of this collide and the contraction of it, the folded mountains were created and these gigantic mountains have come to the existence. So this is, here important thing is that still it is going on as it is moving with a speed of 67 millimeter per year. And you know the plate tectonics things are going inside. So this is going down as a 20 millimeter per year. So it's a very active mountain and that's why you are always listening that very disastrous seismic activities are taking place in Himalaya. Okay? It is maybe you talk about this Assam or in Nepal or in Afghanistan or in Kashmir. So many major earthquakes, Uttarkasi, have taken place in the last 20-30 years. So these are all happening because of this active. Now you understand, because Himalaya is a very gigantic structure. So we have to understand geologically and geomorphologically. Also we can see. This is the lowest portion of this with this color. This is Shivaliks. Then this color, violet color, you are seeing it, this brinjal color, that is lesser Himalaya. Then we are having green color, we are seeing the great Himalaya. And then rest of this red and this blue, it is a trans Himalaya. So we are having four parts of Himalaya, four parallel ranges. Himalayan are in the ranges, they are not like a one single mountain. Okay, parallel they are going. So Shivalik ranges starting from here, all 2,400 kilometers, they are going with their varying width. Then lesser is coming, then great is coming, and then trans is coming. So these are the parallel ranges from north to south to north. It is going like this. Let's have a quick look how they looks like. I'm saying the Shivaliks. So Shivaliks are like it's a typical when you start from the Indo-Gangetic plain, you go towards the Himalaya, you suddenly encounter with a mountain. Actually, they are green hills, green mountains. Like here, you can see it very nicely, and they are lush green. That's why one of the location of so many national parks and sanctuaries are here. I think almost about more than 100 national parks, sanctuaries, reserve areas in the entire Himalayan ranges. Out of that, almost 75% are only in the Shivaliks. You can see this is one of the very famous, Rajaji National Park, very famous for elephants. This is Jim Corbett National Park, where the Tiger Reserve project was started by UN in 1975. This is in the eastern part of India. We have Kaziranga, which is especially known for this one-horned rhino. So this type of national parks are there. So then we are coming to the lesser, second. Remember it, eh? When I'm saying it, this is lesser, this is Shivalik, lesser, great, and trans. Because it's that is the only way we can handle this great gigantic structure. So we are coming to the lesser Himalaya. Lesser Himalaya is the widest part, and it's the most populated area. Shivalik is not very populated because of more of dense forest. Lesser is very populated area, and it is, just have a look of this. Don't think that this is the great Himalaya, white part. Here you are seeing it. This is the great Himalaya. This all is lesser. Pine, oak trees are there, like this pine forest you are seeing. And very important thing, especially for Ethiopia, is we have to see, Himalaya, we never have one single field without terracing. So this was something very unique concept when I came here and saw. So whatever you are seeing in Konso, it is throughout Himalaya. Go to India, Pakistan, Nepal or Bhutan or any state, you will get terracing of this. This is the indigenous knowledge. Then this is the snow, you can see these are the wooden houses, and these are the slate by stone slab roof. Traditional houses are there. Okay, so this is even in the road path also you see the stone slabs. They are called patal or different names over there. So this is lesser Himalaya. This is the main populated area. This is the maximum under pressure of human being. Okay, so because environment is not my aspect, I'm not touching that thing. I'm only focusing on the tourism aspect. One of the basic thing is in this lesser Himalaya we are having the most beautiful hill stations of Himalaya. Like you can see, this is in our Himachal Pradesh, Shimla, where our Dr. Ajitesh is coming. This is Shimla of his state. Shimla is city. This is Nainital from my state. It's a small lake and a beautiful hill station. This is Darjeeling in the eastern part. And then this is Kashmir, Srinagar, the Vale of Kashmir. Very beautiful. So there are numerous hill stations. All are located, most of them are located in the lesser Himalayas. Then another important thing of lesser Himalaya is because it is most people, okay, so more cultivation is there, and now more shifting towards the commercial cultivation is going on. Like this is the tea gardens in the eastern part of lesser Himalaya. This eastern part, when you go, you will get this too much. Fruit, Himachal and Uttarakhand and Kashmir, this is for fruit. Apple and all stone fruits are there. This is the off-season vegetable because huge summer area plains are not growing vegetables. So it is grown on the mountains. And this is saffron. It is one of the very important, how I can explain. It's a kimam. Very, very expensive, and it is grown only in Kashmir, Vale of Kashmir, because it needs a typical climate. Now I am going to the Great Himalaya. Great Himalaya means you are in the glacier. You are on the mountains, peaks, Barado area. Okay? You are on the alpine meadows. Okay? So this is there. And in Great Himalaya, the settlements are very close to the mountains, glacier area. It's a very beautiful, this is the most beautiful part of Himalaya. And these are the mountains, glaciers, mountain activities are here, and alpine meadows. Even in the, when you go to the Bali, like Mr. Sade was showing you, in the Bali also we are having alpine meadows in Ethiopia I saw very developed alpine meadows in the Bale mountains. Next time you go, you see. After tree line will finish, only grass will be there. They are called alpine meadows. They have local names like my area, this Bogyal, Payal and so many things. And here the most economic activity changes from cultivation to animal husbandry. So that's why a lot of, and if you see that long hairs goat, did you see sometimes I see in the Bore also, Bore area also, long haired goats and sheep are there, goats especially. They are the mountain goats. It is common over. Now we are coming to Trans-Himalaya, the fourth part. Okay, what is there? Trans-Himalaya. Trans-Himalaya means up to Great Himalaya we are having a lot of precipitation. Trans-Himalaya, it's dry. So only you will get settlement or greenery when there is a stream. So Trans-Himalaya, you see the settlement type change. It's a typical village. Only this greenery is along the stream, rest is dry. This is another animal which is new for you. It is called yak. Okay, because it's an old Barado area. 8 months, snow picture. So nature makes that. You see the dress of the person. Okay, and this area is very famous for producing a lot of dry fruits. A lot of dry fruits are coming from this area. So this is Trans-Himalaya. So just I have given you a brief introduction of these ranges. Okay, Shivaliks, Lesser, Great and Trans. Now this is parallel ranges. There are division like this also. Starting from Kashmir, we are going up to the eastern part. So I will give you, because it will be somewhat more interesting for you. So I am just giving you an administrative division of Himalaya. Actually up to here, up to that part, that is the Great Himalaya, the main Himalaya. This is extension of Himalaya, we call it the Eastern Himalaya or Purvanchal Himalaya. So many small states, very beautiful states are there, and they are having very rich culture and traditions. One by one we'll check it. This is Mizoram, then we are having Tripura, then we are having this is Meghalaya, Tripura, Mizoram, then Manipur, Nagaland, then this is Arunachal Pradesh. We are back to the main ranges. Then Bhutan and Nepal is not in India, but because it's in continuation, so we'll touch it. Then it is Sikkim, Nepal, this is Uttarakhand, my state from where I'm coming. This is Himachal, and this is Kashmir. So this is the total expansion of it. Let's have a quick look of it. My purpose is not to show you the physical, just I want to show you how the land and people of this area looks like. Okay, that will be more interesting for you. And I'm starting from Meghalaya. Remember it, we are starting from this corner, and one by one we are going, and then we'll go to here. Okay, this way we are going it. Now this is Meghalaya. Meghalaya, the meaning of the home of clouds. And why it is home of clouds? This state, the small state, is location is like that. The largest amount of precipitation recorded in the world is this place called Cherrapunji. And then this is a typical, they have their own tradition, culture, a lot of tribes are here, and it's a very green and fertile area. Then we are going to the Assam hills. A small portion of the Assam comes under hill area, otherwise Assam is plain. It is on the Brahmaputra valley, and this is the tea cultivation. They have a very rich tradition and culture. Normally the cultivation in most of the Himalaya is same. When there will be something unique, I will show you. Okay, so this is, you can see the slightly a mangolite feature on the eastern part of India, but they are Indians. Don't think that they are China or something. No, they are our Indian people. Then Tripura, another state is Tripura. It has a kingdom. It has a very great history, and it has so many historical sites besides being all this. And you can see the way they are living. The houses are there. A lot of precipitation is there. Because of that, they are making houses like this. And this is Tripura. Then we are going to Mizoram, another small state, typical mountain state. Too much of streams, dense forest. Because of heavy precipitation in this area, you will get a lot of greenery. This is Shillong, Aizawl, the city of Mizoram, capital of Mizoram. Then Manipur. Manipur is again a very rich state in terms of history and tradition, though it is in the far east of India. And they have developed their own dancing style. That is called classical dance of Manipur. They have developed a lot of smart cultivation. They are going for this horticulture. This is a very important thing of Manipur called Loktak Lake. It is a very big lake, intermountain valley lake, and it has a lot of activities, cultivation is going on, and these are the ladies in their traditional dress. Then coming to the Nagaland, another small state, it is known as the land of headhunters. They are very ferocious fighters. Nobody can conquer them. Even one army of India, one regiment of India is coming from this small state, Nagaland. This is predominantly a Christian state, and a lot of beautiful churches are here. But the most attractive thing is their traditional culture. Here you see this. This is Nagaland, very green state, and slowly they are entering into the north. And now we are coming to Arunachal Pradesh. Did you observe till my 5-6 slides? I did not show you ice, snow or ice. But here, because now we have come to the main range of the Himalaya. So here, cultivation of this tea cultivation is very common over here, and inter-mountain valleys are there. Actually, the mountains are very steep of Arunachal Pradesh. Arunachal means the state of dawn, because India's dawn starts in Arunachal Pradesh, or the day starts with Arunachal Pradesh. It is the easternmost part of the India. So we call it as a Arunachal Pradesh. Then we are coming to the Sikkim, another mountain kingdom, beautiful state. It has a very, very beautiful peaks. It has a very good, tourist places, and it is also one of the very leading state in the horticulture, food production, fruits and other vegetables cultivation. And then we are coming to the Bhutan. It is an independent kingdom, and it is not part of India, but our foreign and defense is part of India over there. So Bhutan is a kingdom. You can see the queen and prince of Bhutan in their traditional dress. It is a purely state of mountain, or I will say the Great Mountain. They are very much located on the Great Himalaya, not in the Shivalik and Lesser. So Gompa, Lamistic Buddhism is their culture and their village. You can see how their lifestyle, and you can see the steepness of the mountain and the valleys. So this is. Then we are coming to the Nepal, the kingdom of mountains. Once it used to be the Hindu kingdom, now it is a democratic nation. But Hinduism is very much part of this culture, this country, and mountain is very much part of it. Everywhere you will get, out of your 8,000 meters peak, almost 9 or 10 are only in Nepal. So it's a typical mountain kingdom. I'm not showing you those peaks because already Mr. Dava has shown you all this Everest, K2, Manaslu, and Lhotse. All these are in Annapurna, Amadambal, all these are in Nepal. They are all 8,000 meters peak. And this is the cultural part, you can see it. Then we are coming to Uttarakhand, my state, from where I am coming. And this is the mountain, and we are having this, it's Himachal and Uttarakhand is a very much culturally rich state. There are a lot of shrines over there. And these are the high mountain, one of the area called Valley of Flower. So this entire valley is naturally full of flowers. And this is the peak called Mount Trishul. So it's a very beautiful state. I wish you should visit. And then we are coming to the Himachal Pradesh. Himachal Pradesh has 3 distinct cultures as we are having in case of Kashmir. So if you see that when we are going to the Lesser Himalaya, we are having, Shivaliks and Lesser, we are having this pine forest, dense forested area. And Himachal, and then we are going to the Great Himalaya, we are having inter-mountain valleys, and they are like Sangla valleys there. And you see that there are unique architect. Throughout Himalaya, you will not get this type of architect. Then they are making a house, and there's like a pyramid, like a minaret, and upon the minaret they are making this structure. It's a unique thing. It's a very beautiful structure. Then when we are going to the Great Himalaya, this type of structures are coming, and sites are developed. Some lake is there. And then when you go to Trans Himalaya, then this typical monasteries and dry area. You see that the change of the vegetation in this area, how it is changing. It is within one state, because we are crossing Shivalik, Lesser, Great, Trans, all the 4 ranges. Then we are going to the Jammu and Kashmir, one of the very beautiful state of India. And if you see that this is a very, you can say, landmark picture of Kashmir. It shows from the mountains to the valleys, and grass meadows called margs. There makes the Kashmir very beautiful. And then we are having, this is the houseboat. Kashmir is an inter-mountain valley. The huge lakes are there, Dal Lake and all. And in Dal Lake there are houses. These are houses floating like Jalwa like house. You can go, you can stay, and you can have as a tourist. We call it a houseboat. Okay, shikara and all these things. And because it is Kashmir is very much connected with water. Think of it in the mountain, Lesser Himalaya, there has a huge lake, and every village are connected with the water, and this is life. This is the traditional Kashmiri dress, and this is the cultivation of saffron. Kashmir is known for the cultivation of apple, fruits, and saffron, and this type of things. Another thing, as I told you, there are 3 distinct zones. What you are seeing is, it is the central part, or the Vale of Kashmir. Then here you can see 2 parts. This is the Lesser Himalayan part, Shivalik lesser Himalayan part, where the Dongra culture is very common. They are also very big fighters. And then if you go to the Trans-Himalayan area, you see the Trans-Himalayan area is totally dry because all the monsoon checked by Himalaya, Trans-Himalayan leeward side. So this is becoming dry, monasteries are there, and again different culture you are finding over here. So this is a brief, I try to give you a brief picture starting from Meghalaya, taking the full round and going up to the Kashmir. So you can see different variation over here. Now coming down to our main theme, that is the tourism in Himalaya. It is very diversified topic, very diversified, because so many ways people are coming to Himalaya. Okay, they are based on the nature studies people are coming, based on the culture, based on the education, based on the hobbies. So for different purpose people are coming over there. But I would like to focus on the, because if you say which are the most dominant type of tourism in Himalaya, so it is religious and cultural tourism, then it is adventure tourism, then visiting hill station during summer, fun and frolic, because during summers the plain is very hot. India is very hot during summer, so people are coming to the mountains and they are staying and spending some time. Okay, so they are very big centers, as I show you some of the cities. And then another thing which is coming up is a very big way is educational tourism. Now some prosperity has come to the country and we are having very prosperous schools. So whole school like 1,000 or 2,000 students are going to the mountains. So that's one way for economy it is very good, but for environment it is a very big challenge over here. So now I will in this and start covering all the religious sites. I'm sure it will be more than 1,000 and at least 500 will be those who are gathering more than 100,000 visitors per year. Okay, and there are some shrines which are attracting more than 1 million people per year. Believe me, it's a very gigantic structure. That's why I was telling you, Himalaya has a very spiritual value. So this is in the Shivaliks. I'm dividing into the Shivalik, Lesser, Great and Trans. So Shivaliks, this is one of the place over there. In the Lesser Himalaya, you will get so many temples. From Lesser and Great Himalaya, you will get this type of temples. This is Eagle Nest in the Bhutan. This is in the Himachal. This is in the Uttarakhand. So these are the shrines where people are coming. And then we are going to the Trans-Himalayan area. In Trans-Himalayan area, again, you see that mostly the Buddhist culture is dominant over here. And monasteries are there on the top of a hill. Vertical cliff, you will see monasteries. So this is monastery in the eastern part. If you remember Arunachal Pradesh, this is the one monastery. And this is the monastery in the Ladakh, Kashmir. So from east to west, you are getting this type of monastery in Trans-Himalayan area. Then there are certain impact of the this pilgrimage tourism. Positive is there is giving employment, economy, culture, and this. Negative is the land transformation, land abandonment, cultural erosion, over and under population. So these things are there. Besides that, there is a big challenge for the environment. Another thing is the adventure sport, which is one of the very big aspects of Himalaya. So quickly, let's be fast and let's see. This is mountaineering. Throughout Himalaya, starting from the Arunachal Pradesh till Kashmir, we are having the mountaineering sport, and then we are having skiing. Skiing means when they are by the skis, people are skiing down in the mountain. They are very developed slopes are there in the, like Gulmarg and Pahalgam and Kashmir and Oli and all. Then heli skiing. Heli skiing is a new sport in which with the helicopter people are dropped. It was very common in Alps. It has come to Himalaya also. They are dropping to a high mountain and then they are skiing down to the valley. So they are getting a larger skiing slope. Trekking, very common and very throughout Himalaya, even eastern part of Himalaya also. You will get a lot of trekking going around the year, especially during summers. Camping, the camping you can say that it's not an adventure sport, but I will. And it is a big challenge because huge number of people are coming for camping and they are staying there for various purposes and they are creating pressure on this. Then rock climbing. This is another sport of rock climbing. This is all the high altitude rock climbing on the mountains, starting from the bouldering to the cliff climbing. This is cliff climbing. Most of you are seeing this. These are the cliff climbing. Then mountain cycling. This was not very common, but this is becoming very popular nowadays. This cycling, and cycling they are going in a very big number. Especially it is more popular in the Trans-Himalayan area. Why? Because Himalaya is very steep. Like Lama Limo road is there, it is very common in Himalayan area. But Trans-Himalaya is somewhat more comfortable. So a lot of cycling is taking place over there. This is the Khardungla, the world's highest road. So people are making target to go to the Khardungla by cycle. Then we are having motorcycle. Motorbiking is also very common. It is happening. Then mountain safari. Now people can afford, and like this is the Jojila Pass. So Sipki Pass, Nakula Pass. These passes people are going with the, like everyone cannot do cycling or trekking. So with the car they are going and they are enjoying it. Aero sports, variety of aero sports from air ballooning, hang gliding, parasailing, so many things are, especially in the Shivalik area and Trans-Himalayan area, they are very common because they need some climatic condition for that. White water sports, rafting and kayaking, canoeing, these are all called white water sports. Okay, so white water sports are also very common. So many of the major Himalayan rivers, they are doing it. What are the challenges? Because when I say the millions of people are going for this, then of course the collection of the garbage in the high mountain area and very remote area, it is very difficult to bring. Because after 10,000 feet, the oxygen is very less and carrying your body is itself a challenge. So if some garbage is collected there, that's going to be a big challenge over there. Then overcrowded camping sites. This is very common. You see that this is one of the pilgrimage site or camping site, and then it is overcrowded. So it is very difficult to handle this type of situation. Another very interesting thing, very new problem has come to the mountaineering scenario. There is a record that total 600 people have climbed Mount Everest. Mr. Dabas, like was saying. One day, 113 people climbed Mount Everest. Why? It has become a commercial ticket. You have to give certain millions of rupees and it will become a commercial package. And you see that how many people are climbing in a single day like a queue. This is a big challenge. It's as a spiritual part, as a sport part, and as for the environment. Another thing is, because of the demand of the people, great influx is coming, there's a huge construction in the hill station or the base camps. So you see that this is not permitted in a hill station. It's not. Sometimes the area is very sensitive. So this type of situation is coming. Then increasing frequency of accidents, casualties and disasters. It is happening in the mountain during a sport, we can understand. Because of another thing is, so many disasters are increasing on the mountains, and that is also becoming a problem. There are other challenges like deforestation, cutting of juniper and rhododendron, land degradation, biodiversity loss, increasing frequency of disaster, overconstruction, pollution of streams, increasing pressure on the small base town camps. So these are the other major problems which is coming over here. So there are certain recommended things are there. That is the sharing of the knowledge and programming. Globally, we have to share the knowledge to handle this problem. Capacity building and awareness raising with the people, those who are going in the mountain area or those who are living over there. Prevent waste disposal, that is the biggest problem. We are carrying there and we are disposing it. And then it becomes very dangerous. Build the capacity of the mountain communities and the municipalities. Those who are the base camp municipalities out there, they are not able to handle it. Then develop small scale solutions. For every glacier, small solutions should be developed, plan should be developed. Let me show you something about the Himalaya, the great Himalayan ranges, and focus on the tourism and different aspects of tourism, especially the adventure tourism and the religious or cultural tourism. So thank you very much for that.